Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be reviewing Springleaf Residences, which is the first mega development to come out in this area. Now in this video, we're going to be answering a few questions. So aside from going through the project overview, we're going to talk about and deep dive into whether an untested location like this for this kind of project is grabbing onto an early opportunity, or are you going in blind over here? Now next, we'll also cover priority buyers. Why do they often overpay for their unit? Now, if you're unfamiliar, for this development, it is by Guoco and Leong. So if you have ever bought a development for them, being resale, new launch, or you're even tenanted in one, you will be eligible to be in the priority queue and book before public. But we're going to talk about what exactly you need to do to prepare for that. Now, next, we'll also look into what kind of units and what to look out for in order to be able to exit easily next time, because especially for something as large as this, where it's close to 1,000 units, you need to be extremely intentional and strategic about what units you're picking in order to be able to safely exit in the future. And diving deeper into that, we'll talk about which layouts you should be avoiding in this development. So without further ado, let's look into the details first. So this is the location that we are located at. Now we are right next to Springleaf Condo. Now if you just look at the map, what do you see? A lot of green. So we're surrounded by a lot of greenery and forestry. And in terms of residentials, it is largely landed homes or smaller condos. So there hasn't been anything like this, and there's really been a lack of supply coming into this area. Going to the overview of the development, this will have 909 units spread across 5 blocks. Now, something unique about this condo, it also has a conservation building that will also consist of residential units, and there will be 32 units for that. In terms of TOP, we are looking at roughly 2029. Now, this is also going to have basement car park lots, and you're looking at about 759 lots, which is a pretty decent ratio to the number of units in this development, seeing as we are next to the MRT. Now, for the unit mix in the high-rise building, you're going to be able to get a 2-bedroom all the way to a 5-bedroom. And for the conservation building, it will be a 1-bedroom to a 3-bedroom. So in terms of the largest number of units, that's definitely going to go to the 3-bedroom, which has 39%. Coming in very closely is the 2-bedroom, which is 35% over here. So definitely we can see the intention of this developer is to have this as a very own stay development already. Going into the site plan, let's first look at the views. So on this end over here, you will be able to see the landed view. And on the back end here, you'll have the forestry view. So this will likely be the most premium view since it's unblocked. Now, if you really like green views, you will be able to get it on the other side as well, but you will be next to the highway. So looking at the building design, you'll realize that it's very biophilic in theme, which is a requirement for the developer coming into here. So for the high buildings, they go up to the 25th floor, but for certain stacks, you're going to see sky terraces scattered throughout. Now, going into the facilities itself, again, you will see this theme of greenery that is integrating into the environment throughout. You have a lot of trees surrounding the development. In fact, when you first drive into the entrance here and going into the arrival court, you have this huge tree that will be a feature. Now, next to it is the Grand Lawn, which used to be part of the school. So here's the conservation building. And this used to be a pre-university institute, which quite interestingly will also give you your own private running track here. Now, side gate will be over here, so going out here, you'll be able to walk to the MRT within 5 minutes. Swimming pool wise, you have a good number, 50-meter lap pool, spa pool, as well as leisure pool. Some of the more unique things I see is also you have a forest walking trail here. So again, tying into that nature theme. I really do appreciate, as a pet owner too, they have some pet-centric facilities here where you have a pet lawn and cocoon, which is pretty smart for this neighborhood too, since you have quite a lot of pet businesses in the area. Next, let's look at the starting prices, which has just been announced by the developer a few days ago. So for 2-bedroom, we're looking at a starting of 1,078,000. A lot of eye-catching numbers across the board, especially for the 3-bedroom. I think this is where it will move fast, with a starting number like 1,600,000. This price is very difficult to find for new launches nowadays. In fact, we're likely looking at EC mostly for this kind of pricing already. However, this definitely remains to be seen on how the developer is going to price from this starting price. Are they going to have a big jump to start for the next most expensive unit, or will they price very closely and gradually to this? Because if they do it that way, I believe this will be priced quite smart to move at least a huge percentage on day one. Now moving on to our first question, which is this is quite an untested area for a large project like this. So being a first mover of sort, are we really grabbing onto an opportunity or are we going in blind? So how do we determine if there is future resale demand for something like this? Moving on to our first question, which is this is an untested area for a large condo like this. So being a first mover of sort, are we really grabbing onto an opportunity here or are we going in blind? How do we determine if there will be future resale potential in this area? Now, when they announced this condo, it reminded me of another development not too far away. Now, you might have heard of the Lentor cluster, but have you heard about Meadows at Pierce? Now, back when Meadows at Pierce launched, there was not much new development or announcement of the Lentor projects yet. This area, very similar to Springleaf, was surrounded by largely landed homes as well as very old condos. Now, how did they do in terms of their profit? Because looking back then, it was considered a pretty ulu area and there wasn't even any MRT nearby at that point of time. Now, if you look at the profits of Meadows, you can see that it's extremely healthy, almost hitting $1 million for many of them. And what is even more interesting is that those that have made good profits aren't all new launch buyers. Even those that bought much later at resale are still able to make very healthy profits. But the big question is why? And the answer is supply. There is nothing like it in the area. So why do I say that? Does it mean that we build a condo anywhere with low supply, it will definitely do well? What is the hallmark similarity between Meadows as well as Springleaf? Now you want to look for an area that is already established as a livable residential estate but has low supply of your particular type of development. So with Springleaf, we know there's a lot of landed there, there's eateries, there's shops, and there's even an MRT. But there's absolutely no large new condo there and there is no supply at all. So with the upcoming changes announced by URA in the area as well, and it being the first of its kind and there's no other supply, it will likely pull in even more resale demand in the future, and we might see the same thing that happened at Meadows but at even larger scale. Moving on, why do even priority queue buyers sometimes overpay? With first access to the units, more choices, wouldn't you have more value deals? Now to understand how this happens and why this happens, let's look at another development Lentor mentioned. Now I pulled this condo because it is by the same developer, Guoco, and back then they too had a priority booking day on 15th of March and when it's open to the public on 16th of March. So let's look at some of the units that transacted on those 2 days. So first we have a 3-bedroom. Now there were 2 units that sold on the same floor. One was in stack 28 and stack 16. Now both have very similar facings as you can see and they were the exact same size. So stack 28, the one over here, sold on 15th of March, which is the priority booking, and it sold for 1,804,000 over here. Now, the next day when it opened up to public, 16, stack 16, same size, same floor, 1,789,000, which is 15k less than the unit that was sold on priority booking. Now, for the exact same thing, wouldn't you as a buyer prefer to save that 15k? But why did this buyer that bought on priority queue day choose that one instead? Let's look at another example for the 4-bedroom. Now for 4-bedroom, there were again 2 units. One was in stack 43 facing the pool and with the opposite block over here. And then another more premium facing, same type of unit, stack 23 that sold same floor as well. Now for stack 43, which is the pool facing, the one with the opposite block as well, it sold on the priority booking day and it sold for 2,778,000. However, the next day, when it was open to the public, the more premium facing one, stack 23, sold for 2,787,000, which is just 9k more. Now for just a 9k top up, which is so minimal, wouldn't you want to go for the most premium stack view, which in Lentor mentioned was stack 23, where you have unblocked looking at the park, rather than the pool view where you have another block directly opposite you? So why is it that the priority queue booking buyers end up choosing these 2 units instead? Now, is it a matter of preference? Possibly it could be. But what very often happens, and this happens not even just with priority booking, if you are on day one of booking and your number is 1 to 100, what is the problem? Yes, you have a lot of choices, but then it comes buyer's fatigue because you have too many choices. You don't know what to look at first. And when it comes to developers, some of them will release the full price list on that day, which then you'll be overwhelmed at which units to look at first because you don't have a lot of times to choose. Or they will not release the price list and you just tell them maybe 1 to 10 units of price that you want to see and then you choose from there. So if that's the case where we have over information or under information and very short period of time, how do we then make sure that we choose the right unit that is still safe? How do we prevent that from happening? Now I'm going to show you 5 simple steps you can follow just by knowing a few unit prices to ensure that the unit you choose is safe and a good value to go into. Now let's dive in. Now for first step, which you need to do before booking day, is to really think about what are the 2 categories of units you are going to eye on. For example, you know you only want a 3-bedroom, then maybe you are focusing on the 3-bedroom compact versus a 3-bedroom premium layout. Or maybe you're someone that's looking at 3-bedroom premium and possibly a 4-bedroom if it still falls into budget. Either ways, know exactly what is the 2 categories you are focusing on. Because if you have no idea and you're looking at 1 bedroom all the way to 5 bedroom, definitely it's going to get confusing and you're going to miss out on the good units and possibly choose the wrong one. Now, once you've decided on these 2 categories, next is step 2. Now, step 2 happens on booking day. So when you first go in, you already know which are the 2 unit types that you are looking at in terms of category. Now, you need to finally decide which is the main one you're going to focus and prioritize on now that you're at booking day. So how do we do that? Now, you take 2 different unit types that you shortlisted, and then you take the same floor and same facing to understand what is the premium you are paying for the extra space. So for example, a 2-bedroom at Springleaf, you can get it for 646 square feet. And then for a 3-bedroom compact, the smaller size is 786 square feet. Now, assuming the price difference is 250k, and for the size difference is 140 square feet, this means that just for that extra space, you are paying about 1,785 per square foot. So how do you know if that is a good deal? Now, since this PSF is so much lower than the average PSF of the unit itself, it's only 82% of the price, this would definitely be a good value unit to go for because you are getting a discount on that extra space. However, if let's say the way that the premium is placed, you are paying above 2,162 per square foot, which is the square foot for the compact, then maybe you want to reconsider on whether that unit type is worth it. Now that we have decided on which unit type to prioritize, we move on to step 3, which is when we choose which facing to prioritize. So for this example, we're going to take 2 units of the same type that we have chosen on the same floor but with different facing. So for this example, we're taking 3 bedrooms at Springleaf of the same size. One is towards internal facilities and the other one is towards the highway, which will naturally be a slightly less premium facing. So how do we know if the premium for facing is worth it? So let's say the 3-bedroom facing the highway is 2,100 per square foot, and then let's say the other one facing the pool is 2,150 per square foot on the same floor. So for that extra 50 per square foot you are paying for the better view, it's amounting to about 46,000. So taking the extra 50 per square foot divided by the average for the better view is about 2.3%. In this case, I would say it is worth going for the better view because it's quite a small percentage. If you go to other new launches for better views by other developer, often you'll see it being 3 to 5%, which is when you should start to be more cautious of the view premiums. But if it's something like this, definitely go for the better view. I definitely think it is worth it. And moving on to step 4, now that we have our unit type and our view, we would then decide the layout. Because if we are paying for more space, we want to make sure that the layout is also worth the extra space. So let's say we're looking at the 3 bedrooms again in Springleaf. You have a 904 square feet layout and you have a 926 square feet layout. So for that, the difference is mainly in the walkway area for these 2 layouts. Internally, they are very similar. Step 5, which is when you decide which floor you should be going for and whether it's more worth it to pay for a high floor or to go for a low floor. And how you do this is by taking the layout you have shortlisted as well as the facing you have chosen, and then you take a few sample units from each floor range. So you have low floor, mid floor, and high floor. And to understand this, we'll be looking at Lentor Mansion again. So let's take stack 38 as an example, which is a pool facing stack. So looking at stack 38 in Lentor Mansion, let's look at level 6 and level 7 first, the lower floor, and this will tell us what one floor jump is amounting to. So in this case, it's 28,000, which means a 1.4% premium over here. Then we take a further range to mid floors of around the level 10 area. So for 3 floors here, we see there's an 18,000 jump, and that would mean about a 0.3% per floor in terms of premium. Next, we take an even wider range at the high floor of 16. And we can see that for the 6 floor jumps, it is about 0.9% more. So in this case, the most value floor range is definitely the middle floor, especially when you're going for a pool facing with an opposite block. The high floor is not going to have much of a view difference as well. So premium wise, I would say the middle floor is the most worth it. So just with these 5 steps and knowing a few certain unit pricing, even if you don't have the entire list, you'll be able to ascertain whether the one that you are choosing is safe to go into. So go into booking day, whether it's priority or not, come with a strategy, or make sure that your agent knows how to do this so that you don't end up overpaying for a unit that you choose and regret later on. So for this final segment, we're going to go through all the different layouts together to decide which are the better ones and which to avoid. Now we're going to do this by splitting the high-rise layouts from the conservation building layouts because there will be some differences. So starting with the high-rise, the smallest is 2-bedroom. Now for 2-bedroom, you have 2 different layouts, which is 2-bed, 1-bath, and then 2-bed, 2-bath. So in terms of size difference, we're looking at 527 versus 646, with 2-bed, 1-bath mainly facing towards the highway with 1 internal facing block. And then for 2-bed, 2-bath, you're going to have more premium facing and none facing towards the highway. Now internally, what are you getting that is different for the 2-bed, 2-bath? Of course, an extra bathroom, but what you will not be able to see from the floor plan here and only at the show flat is the width of the living room. Now for 2-bed, 1-bath, it is 2.8 meters, whereas 2-bed, 2-bath is 3.1 meters. And this will really make a difference to the space. 2-bed, 2-bath living room is going to feel a lot more spacious. In terms of the other features such as the kitchen, you have one that looks semi-enclosed versus a completely open one. And for the dining area, you could even possibly fit a 6-seater versus a 4-seater here. So purely based on layout, I would prefer the 2-bed, 2-bath, but it will also really come down to what is the premium for the extra space as well as the facings. Next, we have the 3-bedroom. So for 3-bedroom, you're going to have a few different groups, and we're going to be looking at them by those that are similar in size and likely priced group by group. Now the first is going to be the 3-bedroom basic, which is like a compact layout of sorts. So you're going to have 786 square feet and then 818 square feet. So for the smaller 786 square feet, it mostly faces internal, whereas 818 is mostly outwards. So this is quite interesting. The developer here tries to almost have every unit has a good point and a bad point in a way. So very similar to what we saw with the 2-bedroom, the larger layout tends to face outward to the somewhat less premium facing, which is towards the highway, whereas the smaller size layouts tend to face inwards towards the more premium facing, so that every unit kind of has its own selling point. Now for 786 square feet internally, just as with the 818, you have 3 bedrooms over here. Now for the kitchen here, it's going to be an open concept still. You could potentially put a glass door, but because there is no window, it is not enclosable. Now this is also more of a dumbbell layout where you have the 1 room on the side here and then the other 2 over here. Now this is definitely more size efficient, but in the market, we still see that most own-stay buyers tend to gravitate towards the traditional layout, which is what we see in 818, having all the rooms tucked in one side. Now for 818, you also get the benefit of a window in the kitchen, so there's more ventilation and you could potentially enclose it if you want. In terms of the walkway though, you do get a bit more wasted space in the walking in, but that also quantifies to more privacy because those that are passing by cannot directly look into your unit. Moving on to the 3-bedroom standard. Now from this range onwards, it's all going to be 900 plus square feet and likely a big jump in price compared to the first 2 because now you get an extra flexi room and all of them are internal facing towards a more premium view. So starting with the smallest, which is 900 1,104 square feet. Now you get this extra flexi room here, which you can use as a study, a storage room, or even a helper's room. But what I think is a big shame here is that this structural wall is not hackable. If not, you also have the option to make your living room bigger or possibly a bigger kitchen if you wish. Now in addition, you also get a dry kitchen, which adds a bit to that luxe feeling if you like. Now comparing it to 926 square feet, these two over here, internally they are very similar, just that you have a longer walkway over here. These two are also internal facing and they are mirror image. And lastly, we have 958 square feet, which again, very similar internally, just that you have a much longer walkway here, and there will only be one stack for this. Now for the next segment, we have 3-bedroom plus, which is all 1,000 square feet and above. So for the first is 1,023 square feet, and again, mostly internal facing. Now what's the difference between this and the previous group we saw, which was the standard? Now on top of the flex room, you're getting extra house shelter and also a bathroom, a third one over here. Now initially when I saw this bathroom there, I really thought, why is it at the corner at an entrance? But actually looking at it again, I feel like in the Asian household where a lot of us like to wash our feet when we come home, this is actually quite a strategic point to have it. And of course, as a guest bathroom, like sometimes you have the guest bathroom in the kitchen and they have to walk through your laundry area or cooking, which is not very pleasant. So I think having it here is actually quite a bonus. And then next we have the 1,076 square feet, which again very similar to 1,023 square feet, but then you have a bit of a longer walkway here. And as with that, you also have, it's kind of outward facing, but it's a bit of a further setback than those that are nearer to the highway. So all in all, considering all the 3-bedroom, my top choice would be the 904 square feet one, which gives you all the benefits that you will need in an own stay 3-bedroom. You have the flex room here to do with what you want, a proper dining area, but it still managed to keep it very compact, which will help the quantum. And again, you have some pretty decent facing. Of course, that really comes down to how they price the premium as well, but purely based on layout, this will be my top choice for a 3-bedroom. Now moving on to the 4-bedroom, you're going to have two different layouts that are exactly the same size. So they're going to be 1,227 square feet. However, facing wise, there's going to be differences. Now for D1, you're going to get some of the most premium facing, which is unblocked towards the forest as well as internally. And then for D2, you're going to get closer to the highway as well. Now internally, what you're going to get different from the larger 3-bedroom is now you have an extra 4th bedroom, and also you have a bigger living area that can put up to an 8-seater dining. Now the benefit of this layout is that if you do not need the full 4-bedroom, you are able to hack this wall and create a very spacious living room that is wide. However, I will say one downside, which I'll insert a video to show you later, is this pillar over here that you cannot hack. So even though you open up that full view, you will still have a pillar in the middle. But overall, I'd say it's a very comfortable size. If you are able to hack especially, it's going to feel like a very big living space. So to illustrate with the showroom, you can see they hacked one of the bedrooms here. Again, you have that pillar there in the middle, which cannot be knocked. Now for D2, very similar internally also, just that your entryway is a bit different shape and how the bathroom is placed is also a bit different, but nothing too compromising to the livability. So between the two, I wouldn't say there is one layout I prefer to the other because it's so similar. It's really going to come down into how much more you are paying for a more premium facing versus not. So the final and biggest layout for the high-rise would be the 5-bedroom, which starts at 1,453 square feet and naturally comes with the more premium unblocked view as well as internal. Now the difference between this and the 4-bedroom is now you get an extra junior ensuite here, and this feature which I really love, which is a big window over here. Now not only does this make the house feel brighter, it's going to give you more cross ventilation. And it's very hard to find a 5-bedroom with this kind of layout that has a window opposite the balcony. Even looking at Lentor Mansion, which is same developer, you can see their 5-bedroom, the layout is so similar from the kitchen to living room, but it doesn't come with a window. And the window is going to make a huge impact. I'll insert a video here to show you how much brighter it makes the unit. Now coming back to the layout, the house shelter placement is also going to be a bit different. It's at the entrance versus all the other layouts which are tucked with the kitchen. For the 5-bedroom, there is one more size, which is 1,475 square feet. Internally, very similar to what we just went through, but the walkway will be a bit longer, and this layout doesn't come with the window over here. So naturally, my top choice for the 5-bedroom will be the 1,453 square feet layout. I love the window over here, and I really think it's a very, very premium and decent layout. So moving on to the conservation house units. So this conservation building used to be Seletar Institute, which is a pre-university school. So basically that's where they used to take A-levels. So for this, you're going to get a 1-bedroom all the way to a 3-bedroom. So looking at the 1-bedroom first, there's only going to be 8 units of 1-bedroom in this whole development. So if you were to go for a conservation unit, which to me is quite a niche type of buyer that will like it, I would suggest going for the 1-bedroom because you're not going to have competing supply from the high-rise development. Now you can see the size is 388 square feet and it will be over here for the conservation, which is in the middle units. So very standard for a 1-bedroom, but I do like that you can quite comfortably fit a dining as well as quite a spacious living room over here. Now moving on for the conservation one, you're going to have a 2-bedroom. Now 2-bedroom, again, comfortable size, 592 square feet. Not too different from what we saw in the high-rise one, but now you have an open kitchen that is tucked at the side. But because you're going to have a lot of competition from all the high-rise supply of 2-bedroom, I would not recommend going for this. Now the highest floor again for the conservation units will be at the 4th floor, and moving on to the 3-bedroom where we have some variation. Now first is 1,119 square feet, and this is going to be on the 2 corners of the conservation school. Now for this building in front, it will actually be a running track that was kind of repurposed from the school previously. In this layout, I would say one thing I do really like is that it's a very spacious living room here. But on the downside, because it did retain the original structure, you can see there will be beams that pop out here, which you could get an idea to kind of do a smoothed out feature wall, but that will definitely eat into your space and make it smaller. Now in addition, you're not really going to get a house shelter, but I do like that the yard is a separate segment from the kitchen. Like you can really close it off and have good ventilation, hang your clothes, but no balcony with this. And also for the bedrooms, I would say quite a good size. Now moving on to the next 3-bedroom, 1,259 square feet. Now this, you do have a balcony compared to the other one, but it is a very long one. But you will be kind of the star of the block, you'll be in the middle. And it also comes with a very wide living room over here. But again, for this 3-bedroom, no storage room, but you have the comfortable sized bedrooms, a very huge master, I must say, in terms of the walk-in wardrobe, and you can even put a proper study here. And for the kitchen, again, a separate yard. So the big question with all these conservation units is, do they have resale demand and can they perform? So let's look at another development that has a similar type of unit, which is Avenue South Residence. So they too had the high-rise as well as the heritage blocks that look like this. So looking at the heritage block 2-bedroom, it's about 807 square feet, and then for the high-rise 2-bedrooms, it was about 732 square feet. Now profit-wise, I would say the conservation ones did do pretty comparable to the high-rise one, but what you will notice is that their PSF when they bought is very similar to the low floor of the high-rise blocks, which is around 2,000 to 2,100 per square foot. So this gave it a competitive edge in terms of pricing to compare with the other 2 bedrooms in the development. However, if you're going into a condo where the developer prices this as something unique and at a premium compared to the rest of development, I would say it's very hard to exit because number one, you don't have the pricing advantage, and it's a very niche type of buyer that would prefer this kind of unit in a huge development compared to the high-rise. So be smart and look at how the developer prices it on launch day if you are someone that really likes this type of conservation unit. And that's it for today's video. If you're looking to explore this, do take note of the important dates that I've listed above. If you want to find out more about priority booking or have a strategy session on this, you're welcome to reach out to me, and I'll catch y'all in the next video.